Hey guys, in the last couple of videos we've been working on strings, and I felt it's actually a good idea to introduce you to other data types we have other than strings. So let's get into it. So yeah, if you can see my screen, you'll see here I have primitive data types and then complex data types and then conditionals. So first of all, we'll be working with or I'll be showing you or telling you about data types, and then eventually I will equally talk about conditionals. So off to data types. So yeah, when we talk about data types, pretty much in programming, we have different data types. Pretty much what kind of data is this? Pretty much what kind of data? A way to identify the kind of data we're dealing with, right? So in the last couple of videos, we've been dealing with strings, and pretty much a string is a sequence of characters, right? So it could be words, it could be alphanumeric, meaning you have words and numbers, or it could be with symbols. So pretty much this would be a representation of a string. So let's say we have a word called Tony. I like using my name Tony, right? So behind the scenes, pretty much this is what that word Tony is like. You have Tony, and like I explained in the last video, you start counting from zero. So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So whenever you do something like, let's say you created a variable called my name and assign it the value Tony. So when you do Tony square bracket 0, you're actually asking the computer for this um, string here. If you do Tony index 1, it will give you O, and same thing with N, and same thing with Y, right? So this is a string pretty much, and you could actually have um, we could do it another way. Let's say it's uh, Tony with a non Tony, and let me say my name and the year I first started programming. So let's say it could be Tony, and I started programming at 17, and then we could have, why is mother's son sending me a message? Please ignore this guy. Aha. So Tony 17, right? This is a string. Remember it to be a string because it would be in quotations, right? So pretty much you could have something like this: Tony 17. This is a string, right? Now, like I said, this would be index 0, sorry, index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, and index 5. Oh my god, even on the computer, my handwriting is terrible. Okay, so we have this, right? And what makes it a string, like I told you, is once it's in between this quotation marks, so it could be double or it could be single, right? So in this case, we have a string 2017. And if we wanted to get the first so that the first character in this string, right? We'll do something like, let's say I saved this in a variable called my name. So if I did something like my name square bracket 0, if I console.log this, right? What would I have? I would have T, right? Because T is the first character in my name, right? Same thing if I wanted to get the O, right? This would actually have to be, how do I erase this thing? This would have to be, sorry, trying to erase this thing. So this would have to be 1. And then if I did my name index 1, I would have um, O here. Sorry, trying to clear this off. I would have O, right? So pretty much, I don't know why I just thought that I had to probably give like a visual representation of what the string is. So it's simply a sequence of characters. And sorry guys, I had to attend to something. So where was I? Okay, so so that's pretty much strings. So now outside strings we have other. So sorry guys, and you might notice you won't be able to see me because for some reason I have my tiny cousins running around the house. So I had to go out to continue this tutorial. So yes, I was saying, we have strings, numbers, booleans, undefined as the primitive data types, right? So I've already explained strings to us. So the next one would be the number data type. And pretty much a number is just what it is. It's a number. You are able to compute and do basic and complex calculations with numbers. So let's do let's have a sample. So let's say we have a number. Let's call it my num. It's equals to. So when you are creating a variable of type number, right, or a number variable, you don't put it in quotes. You don't do this. If you do this, it's seen as a string. So you can't do something like one times one, right? If you try and run this, let's try and run this first. I think I love showing people how to do things by showing them the wrong way first before I show them the right way of doing things. So my num, awesome. So if I should run this, for some reason you're seeing, sorry, let me run this again. I wonder what is wrong with my system. Okay, so for some funny reason, JavaScript tends to, would I call it convert it for you, but sorry, ideally it's not supposed, this is not the right way to do it. If you try this in another language, you might have an issue. But this is one of the interesting things about JavaScript. So I felt it was going to have a problem and sadly did not. I think if you try this in Python, you'd obviously have a problem. So the right thing to do is you just type the number one, and then the multiplication symbol is your asterisk. So that should be the symbol for number 8 on your keyboard, which is this star sign, and then 1 times 4. And now if I run this, you can see my number, the value of my number is the result of this computation here, which is 1 times 4. So I can even go as far as, okay, 1 times 4 plus 67, and that should give us 71, if I'm still good in math. Yeah, and we have 71, and we can do, okay, divide it by 3, and we get the result. And we get the result. I'm going to repeat and we get the result before this thing comes out. Okay, and we get the result, which is 26.33333, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, my point is, this is how you create a data type, a number data type. Or you could just put in any number. Let's say we want to put in the current year of this video, which is 2021, and it works. And you see we have 2021. So that is for the string data, the number data type. It's just a number, pretty much. And you can do whatever you want. You can, to multiply, you use the star sign. To add, you use the plus sign normally. To subtract, you use the subtraction sign. And then to divide, you use your backslash. Right? And then if you want to get the remainder, let's say for the modulo, that's what it's called. So like if you do 4 modulo 2, it should give you 0 because nothing remains when you divide 4 by 2. So if you do the modulo, that's the percentage sign, 2, you should have 0. So one use case for this is to check if a number is an even number, right? So if any number is, obviously, if we remember primary school maths, it's even if it's divisible by 2, right? So if we were to have 5 here, we should have a modulo of 1, exactly, because there's a remainder 1. If we have 15, God help me if I still know what this modulo will be. Okay, it's still a modulo of 1. So obviously, this is a way we would know if a number is an even number or an odd number. So remember, yeah. So I think, yeah, that should be enough for numbers. And then the next one we have is what we call booleans, right? So what's a boolean? A boolean pretty much is when the data type which is either true or false. So if a thing is true, it means it's true. Sorry. Obvious, if a thing is true, then yeah, or a thing can either be true or false. I think this video is much more fun when my face is in it. So that's pretty much, we have two booleans, and a thing can either be true or false, true and true, false and false, but it can never be true and false, right? It's impossible for something to be true and false at the same time. For example, it's impossible for today to be, let's say it's impossible for, what can be true and false? What a mess. I should be able to come with an example. Okay, it's impossible for you to say five, five is greater than three. but 5 is not greater than 6, right? So if you say 5 is greater than 3 and 5 is greater than 6, that is a false statement, right? So that's pretty much the logic. So it's either true or false, true and true, false and false. So let me show you quickly. So let's create a variable now. Let's call it const my bool. This stands for boolean, right? And we'll just say type, once you just type true. And if you notice, if you type true, lowercase, or false, I can't spell false, or false, you'll notice the color. There's a change in the color. And that is VS Code's way of telling you, oh, I know you're trying to work with a boolean here, right? So remember, you don't put it in a string. If you put this in a string, it's no longer a boolean. It's now a string called a string, a string with the word false in it, right? Or true. So if you want to use a boolean, it has to be true like this or false like this. So now let's say my bool is true. So pretty much what we can now do is let me first of all do the logic check. So a thing can be true. So if you want to check if something is true, right? You could do something like this. Let's say let's create a variable called check, and let's do 5 greater than 3. Now if I should log this out, I should log check out. Now remember, this would evaluate to something. It's a statement and it has to evaluate to something. So in this case, 5 greater than 3 would evaluate to true because 5 is greater than 3. So if I should click the play button now, you should see. Why can't I see anything here? 5 greater than 3, exactly, and you see true here. But if I should do 5 less than 3, now we should have false, exactly. But what if I want to check if 5 is less than 3 and if 5 is greater than 7, right? So to do that, to do a comparison, right, of left and right, that is, if what is to the left here is true and what is to the right here is true, then the way to do that is to use this. You use your and sign, which is the symbol on number 7 on your keyboard, which is this, and 5 greater than 34. Now this should return false. Exactly, because although 5 is, what am I saying? Although 5 is greater than 3, 5 is not greater than 34. So let me run this again just so we're sure. So yeah, we have false. Why is this false? Because although 5 is greater than 3, 5 is not greater than 34. So a clear representation of this would be this. Let me show you guys. So where's my cursor? Let me just take this out and come here and try and take this out too. Let me just start a new. Let me just start something new. Is it possible to clarify this? Let me just do something new. So now, remember I said the thing can be true, true. What's wrong with me? True and true, right? It can be false, false, but it can be true and false. Logically, it's impossible for something to be true and false at the same time. But it can be true or false, right? So if a thing if a thing is true or false, then that flies, right? But it can be true and false at the same time. And if it's true or false, then whichever thing evaluates to true is what would fly. So let's go back to true and false. So when we did this here, when we did 5 greater than 3. So when we did 5 is greater than 3 and 5 is greater than 34. The reason why it returned false for us is 5 is greater than 3 is true, right? But 5 is greater than 34 is a false statement. So this is false. So in the end, we have a true and false statement, and this would always evaluate to what? To false, because the thing can be true and false at the same time. That's a false statement logically, right? But what if we did something like this? What if we did, let me erase this. What if we did this instead? Now we're doing less than, right? So 5 is greater than 3 and 5 is less than 34. Now can you guess what the answer would be? If you guess true, then you're correct. And this is how you break it down. To the left of the and sign, right? Is a statement 5 is greater than 3. And of course that is a true statement. And then to the right of the and sign is 5 is less than 34. And actually 5 is less than 34. So you have a true statement. So and this would evaluate what? True and true. And true will always be what? True. But let's say we're not sure. Let's not move to we're not sure. Let's say we want to say the reason this stuff is quite tough. I don't know why. So let's say we want to do 5 is greater than 3, or my handwriting this bad that I can't even write on the keyboard. On my, like, or even when I try to write on my system, it's so messed up. Okay, let me just take this off totally. So now we have an or statement, right? Or 5 is less than 34. Now, this is true and this is true. So true or true is true. False or false is obviously false. So, well, in this case, what we want to do is we want to make this interesting now. So what if we do, again, we wrongly suggest that 5 is greater than 34, right? Let me erase this because we don't know. This is obviously not true. So this is a false statement. So what do you think this would evaluate to? Evaluate to true. Why? Because if a thing is true or false, and either of the options is true, then that is a true statement, right? So to confirm this, let's go back to our code and do this instead. So the way to use the or statement or the or word, or the way to use or in JavaScript, right? So you don't do this. This is wrong, right? Well, I think you do that in Python, if I'm not mistaken. But you don't do or here. You use the pipe. So what is the pipe? It's this symbol here. So I think that should be the character, the sim, the button on where you have your QWERTY, QWERTY, that line. I think at the end, you should see that pipe, the straight line, right? So if you do this now and we do a check, it will return true. Why does it return true? Because this evaluates to true. And a true or false statement is a true statement as long as one of the conditions. Yeah, as long as there's a truth in either of the true or false, right? So in this case, the truth here is 5 is greater than 3. But what if we did 5 is less than 3? Now we have false because we have false and false. So in a true or false statement, once there's a true statement, then the um that statement is true, right? So true or false, and then one of the statements is one of the checks is true, or one of the things you're looking out for is true. That would be a true statement, right? And that's pretty much booleans. So it's just checking if something is true or false. And I think I would, yeah, that is what you need to know. Then undefined. Now it's pretty much you declare a variable without giving it a value, right? And that is possible. So let's say you created a variable called my book, but um you don't know what you've not decided if you want to assign true or false to it. You just leave it, right? So if you decide to call my bool now, if you print out my bool, you should have a problem. It's initializing. Okay. Is it not? And now I'm doing something very silly and I don't know what it is. Yeah. So I think why doesn't it work when I use const? Okay, I think in the const declaration it has to have value, if I'm not mistaken. Right? This I think we did. Okay. Let's not go into that, but if you want to declare initialize without declaring a value, right? So what this error means is I'm trying to initialize something without a declaration. Declaration means there's a value corresponding to the variable. So in this case, because we just initialized this variable, it's initialized because there's no value attached to it, right? It has no value, it's just my bool. So when I say value, it means there's no equals to something like law. Mm, exactly. So in this case, I've declared a variable called my bool. But if I initialize a variable called my bool, it means I've created it, but I've not assigned a value. And that is why I'm having undefined here, right? Because when I console.log my bool, I'm having undefined. But now this is the beauty of JavaScript. Now we have there's a hack or an easy way to check the value of something, the data type of something. So what we're going to do is we're going to create four data types now. We're going to create a string, a number, a boolean, and then the undefined data type. And to do that, we would create, let's call this my string equals to hello, and then let my number equals to 28. Oh, and remember I said you don't need this semicolon, so let me just take it off in case it confuses you. And then we have my bool. Oh my days, sorry. My bool equals to true, right? And then we have let my undefined, exactly, undefined. Right now I've not assigned the value, so I've initialized it, but I haven't declared it, I haven't given it a value, right? So now if I come here and I'm going to log out four statements, I'm going to log out four things, sorry. I do this and I put my string, my number, my bool, and my undefined, right? If I should print these things out first, you see something. You would see hello 28 true undefined. Awesome. But now what is the data type? If you're not sure, the simple thing you can do is you can do this what we call type of. It's a method, right? The JavaScript affords you. If you do type of this also, and for this one also, type of, and then finally we have another type. So what this would pretty much do is it would JavaScript to tell us the data type of these values we've passed through it, right? So if I should print this out now, you should see string number boolean undefined, just exactly as we have here, right? So this is JavaScript way of telling you, oh, this variable you declared here with the hello word is a string. Why is it a string? Obviously because we have this quotation marks here. So and this is a number, and it's a number. Why? Because it's a digit without the quotation marks, right? And you can even do 28.56. You're allowed to use decimals, and in programming they're called floats, right? And then so in case you see float, just know it's a number with a decimal point. And then you have bool. So even if I change this to false, it still works because false is a boolean. That is the data type of false, right? And yeah, so I think this should be enough for data types, right? So the next one, the type of data type we have is the complex data types. And for now, I would not touch it, but just know we have things called functions and objects. And in the curriculum, we would actually get to that in week 4. Okay, no, not week 4. In week 6, because functions can be really, really tricky. Very, very tricky. So not very tricky, but I mean it takes some getting used to actually appreciate or understand what functions are. So this is enough for our data types. So what I did was, if you highlight something, sorry, in case you're wondering what I'm doing, how this works. If you highlight and you hold Control plus your backslash, it comments out everything for you, in case you're wondering. So the next thing we're going to work on is what is called conditionals. So now remember in your first task, or I think in the second task, we where you when you worked on pseudocodes, I had told you to to program in code a robot and tell it to go to a supermarket and it should buy Fanta, right? And it should buy a drink, and it's okay. You sent it to get a drink, I think Coke, and if it doesn't see Coke, it should get Fanta. But if there is no Coke or Fanta, it should not buy Sprite. It should just come back, right? So um, the way that robot thinks is because you have what we call conditionals. There is an if statement, there's an else if statement, and there is an else statement, right? And that's what I'll be showing you guys now. So let's get into it. So the first thing is, if you want to create an if statement, it's simple. You just type if. Now VS Code gives you suggestions, right? And you just go to this if here and press enter. And now there's a condition you're supposed to pass here, right? Which um would be true or false, right? But okay, so let's just start. So let's look. Let me create a variable. So let's do const my name. So like my name is actually Tony, right? Equals 20. Right, this is my name, right? And now I want to confirm if let's say someone is trying to log in, right? And I only want people whose name who people who bear the name Tony to log in. And let's say we have a user, let's call him wrong name, right? Equals James, right? Now let's say I want my program to only greet someone if that person's name is Tony. Now, the way I can do that is with an if statement. So I could do if, right? Oh, and I forgot there's another comparison. Remember, I told you you have the and statement and you have the or statement, and then you only have the equals statement, right? Or in JavaScript, you have the double equal sign or the triple equal sign. And what this pretty much does is compares if what is to the left is equals to what is to the right in the case of the equal statement, right? So just thought I should put that out there because we're going to use that now, the equal statement. So I can have a condition that checks if my name equals Tony, right? Then log console.log hello man, right? And if I should run this code now, what do you think it would do? Yep, you're correct. It should actually tell me hello man. Why? Because my name, which is this variable, Tony, is actually equals to Tony, right? Well, now what if I do this? What if I change it to uh, John? Now it prints nothing, right? Because obviously this statement is not true. Now why the if block did not run is because of, and obviously I've just said the block. Now in programming or in JavaScript, the block, when I talk of the block, this is what I mean. What you have in between these coily braces, right, is the block, and pretty much is the code that you want to be executed if a condition is true. So pretty much you're telling JavaScript, I want you to do XYZ or whatever I put here. You can put in as many lines of code as you want. So let's say I want to print out hello man for some funny reason about 40 times or 30 times. If I should run this, it, okay, sorry, it's not going to print out because my name is not equals to John. So I'll have to change this to Tony. Then if I should run this again, you'll see hello man, a lot of hello mans, right? So my point is, you can have any amount of code within this block, right? And it's within the block because it's in between these coily braces, that is these two things here. If you take out this coily brace, you would have an issue. You can already see VS Code is screaming at you like, hey, you have to close your curly braces, right? So we put that curly braces back, and now, so whatever code you put here would only execute. That's whatever code you put within this block would only execute if your condition here, if whatever you put here evaluates to true. So that is very important. So let me log hello, and this is madness on my part. I should actually put it as a string. So hello boss. Let's call myself boss. And now if I run it again, you'll see it works. Hello boss. Right? So you can clear up. Let me clear this output. So if I right click here, I can clear my output. So let's say wrong name tries to log in now. Now, is wrong name equals to Tony? Of course not, because wrong name here is James. So James is not equals to Tony. So nothing happens, right? So what? But we can have a different scenario now. Okay, let's. So pretty much this is how your if statement works. It only runs the block of code only works if the condition is true. Meaning, and what's the condition? Whatever I put in between this your bracket here. So we can even do something very interesting. We can, yeah. So yeah, let me keep it simple. So let me change this back to my name. So if my name equals Tony, do this. So let's say, what if the second name is um let's say second name is James. What if we want to check if the second name, let's say we want to create either Tony or James, right? Else we just tell the person, I don't know who you are. Now the way you can do this is you can actually come and have another if statement, and in this case you just simply do if second name equals James, right? I want you to go ahead and log hello James, right? Now you can do it this way, but that will mean you will have a lot of if statements, which is not necessary. So what JavaScript allows you to do is you can use else if. So meaning if this doesn't work, then try this, right? And you can have as many else ifs as you want. You can have as many as you want, right? But in this case, we're just checking for two things. We're checking if the person's name is either Tony or James, right? And I'll show you how you can actually make this code shorter at the end of this video. Hopefully, I remember. So what happens if the name of the person is neither um Tony nor James? Then okay, yeah. So we can have an else statement. And I've noticed the else doesn't take any condition. It doesn't have this bracket you have here, right? Why? Because the else runs if nothing above it has run, right? So in this case, we'll just say else, just print out who the hell are you. And to make this actually much more reasonable, let's actually just say username, right? And let's take this out and let's change my name to username. So we're checking if the username is equals to Tony, then do this else. If the username is equals to Tony, right? Then hello boss. If it's James, then say hello James. Else, ask who the hell are you. So if I should run this, you notice only one thing ran, and that is hello boss. Why? Because this is true. This is false because the username is actually Tony. It's not James. And this did not run because, of course, the if statement ran, right? So the else would only run if neither the if or the else if statement runs. But if either of these runs, then the else statement, the else block would never run, right? So if I come here and change it to James, you should see something now. You see it's telling me hello James, right? What if I come here and I put Sandra? I'm going to get who the hell are you? Why? Because username Sandra is not equals to Tony. Sandra is not equals to James. So the else block would run. So the else block, like I said, only runs if neither the else if statement or the if statement works, right? And the if statement or the else if statement would only run if this condition here, whatever you put here in between this bracket, evaluates to true. So username is not equals to that. Remember, username is Sandra, right? Because you stored it in a variable called you stored Sandra in a variable called username. So username is not Sandra in this case. Is not equals to Tony, and that's pretty much all you need to know about conditional. So you have your if, you have your else if, and you have your else. Now, remember I told you there's how we could have made this shorter. So actually, we could do this. We could say, let's say we just want a special message if the person's name is, since we seem to like Tony and James, right? We could just do this. We could actually take out, comment out this. So remember, if I comment this out, if I comment this out, it would not run, right? And I could just come here and say, if username equals Tony or username equals James. All right, sorry guys. So where was I? So the else this statement would not run obviously because I commented it out. And once you comment something out, you're pretty much telling JavaScript, please ignore this thing, right? So and that's why it's called a comment. So probably you could use comments if you need to explain something in your code to whoever is reading your code because most likely other people are going to go through your code. You are not the only one that is going to read your code, right? So what we can do now is, or what we are doing now is by saying if username is equals to Tony, or if username is equals to, what's wrong with me? James, then console.log hello boss, right? Else console.log who the hell are you? And what we're going to do now is run this. And now we have who the hell are you? Why? Because Sandra is the username. So we change this to James. You would see something interesting. We would have hello boss run. And if we change this to Tony, we would equally have hello boss run as well. Because in this case, the username is Tony, even though it's not James. So once it comes and checks username is equals to Tony, and that is a true statement. It doesn't have to go to check if username is equals to James because this is the true or false statement, right? So it doesn't care once one of the statements is true. Once one of the things there is true, then it doesn't bother because it's true or false and it's a true statement, so it takes it as true. And that is why this block run, which is this console.log boss. So we can actually come here and verify and just log out username, right? And if you should log out username, you should see Tony, because in this case username is Tony. And if I change it to James, you should see James. Hello boss, James. So yeah, but let's say for some reason we want to allow Sandra to, since we've been using Sandra a lot. So we could actually add a check and say, okay, if username is equals to Sandra, right? Then let's just say hello Sandra, right? And in this case, you will notice it doesn't do hello boss, James. Why? Because username is neither Tony or James, it's actually Sandra. So this else if block runs. And this else block, like I said, does not run because the else if ran. So else never runs if else would only run if neither the else if block or the if block runs. Right? And just to prove my point, we could have as many else ifs as we want. We could actually do else if, unless this is actually tiring. But let's do Sam and let's do Smith. If you're a very interesting person, you should know that I just used a musician's name called Sam Smith. So, yeah. So now we're checking for Sandra, Sam, Smith, Sam, Sandra, Sam, Smith, Tony, or James. We come here and we put Smith. See how I create box for myself. I didn't change the names here. And if you notice, there's something very important that I'm going to show you now. But let me run this code first. And I'm having who the hell are you? Because I didn't spell Smith. And my English teacher would probably be turning in the grave if she's dead. So what is wrong with me? Smith. And now I run this code and now you have hello Smith. But you notice if I come here again and I create another else if block, and let's say the name here is Jack, right? I have to come here and manually change here to Jack. And this defeats the purpose of programming. So what can I do? I can easily come here and say hello boss space and add the plus sign, right? Space again, add another plus sign and the username, right? And then let me just copy this line of code, right? And then replace it here, place it here, place it here, finally replace it here. So now what does this basically is this? What this does is this. Now I don't have to manually come here and change the and add James, Sam, Smith. It relies basically on whatever I declared the username to be. So if I should run this code now, you can say hello boss Smith, and it's in the format which I'm saying add this string. So you can add strings together. I forgot to mention that. So add this string, and let's say I want it to look prettier. So check out what will happen now. So notice it looks different now. Hello boss Smith, and this still looks, yeah. So the hello boss Smith, and that is because we're adding a white. This is like an empty space. We added an empty space before the username. So if I should do this, you should see that space should collapse, and it's not collapsing for some reason. So hello boss probably is helping us format it. But yeah, so you can add strings. You can add it's called concatenation. You can add strings together, right? So now if I come here and I change it to Messi, who is the best player of all time. If you don't agree, you can log out of this video. You can stop watching this video. So I'm going to use the best player of all time, Messi. And if I should run this, sadly my program, as much as I love Messi, is going to ask Messi, who the hell are you? Why? Because Messi is neither Tony nor James, neither is he Sandra, neither is he Sam, neither is he Smith, nor is he Jack. Right? So it's going to ask him, who the hell are you, Messi? But if I come back here and I simply change the name to Sandra, you can say hello boss Sandra. So yeah, pretty much this is all you need to know, at least for now, about conditionals. First thing is you have if, and else. And then the first thing you have to know is for if and else if, the condition here has to evaluate to true before the block would execute, before the block would run, or before JavaScript would execute whatever you have within the block. And the block here is pretty much any code you have within this curly braces, right? So in this case, we just have console.log surname. Whereas if the username is Tony, it's going to do two things. It's going to say hello boss plus username and actually the person's username. So we're going to have two things printed out. The person is Tony. So I should run this again. You should see hello boss Tony. So this only prints out twice if it's Tony or James. And the reason is simple because in this block here, in this block for the if statement, we have two extra lines of code, whereas in this one we have just one single line of code. So I think that's pretty much all you need to know for now about um, conditionals. So you have if else. Like I said, we would not touch the complex data types for now because actually it's a bit tricky if you're just beginning to learn JavaScript, right? And then we equally had talked about string, numbers, booleans, and undefined. So I hope this video made a lot of sense, and I hope you stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.